Hello, my friends. This is Crescent Dragon Wagon, and we are here with another debonair. And this one has to do with three gifts that are not gifts until you unwrap them, and you probably don't even think about them. Now, let me back up a little bit. You know that a lot of times when I do these things, I quote different poets that clarify things in some way. And today I'm going to quote a poet I hardly ever quote, Charles Bukowski. And he said, "The important thing is the obvious thing that no one is saying." Now, he meant that about a lot of family dynamic kinds of things where everybody's walking around the so-called elephant in the living room and not dealing with it. And so he meant it in different contexts. But the context that I mean it in is there are three very simple modes in which every adult human being works in, consciously or not. And if you do it consciously and you understand these three modalities, it's one of these things, like so much of what I talk about, very simple but not easy. If you understand these three modalities, they can become gifts and they can become points of choice when you are stuck, when you don't have traction. Here's what they are. There are three modes that we operate in. They are thoughts, feelings, and actions. My fingers standing in for legs, walking. What we think, what we feel, how we act. So all of us have times when we just get at cross purposes with ourselves or lives or circumstances, and we just truly don't know what to do next. We don't have clarity. We just spin our wheels. We're exhausted. That's a moment when you either you take to your bed, you postpone things, you feel anxiety, you do a soft addiction like playing stupid computer games or eating ice cream, or a hard addiction like drinking. You do something to mitigate the anxiety of being stuck, that moment when you want and do not want. It's a little bit like if you've ever had a cat and the cat is batting around a ball or a feather or a cat toy, and it will go crazy doing that. And then all at once, it's like it will stop and it will lick its paw and it will act like, what, me? Play with that? No. I would never do that. So it stops and does something completely irrelevant that's safe and comforting, like grooming. So we all do that at moments when we're really engaged and torqued with something. And then all of a sudden we hit a point where, they can't catch the cat toy. So they start. So you do these little alternate behaviors that take you out of the moment of, do you have to choose to run after the ball or not run after the ball? Okay, you can stop that once you understand that you have three modes: thoughts, feelings, and actions. Because rarely are you stuck in all three at the same time. So let's look at if you're stuck in something emotionally. You're replaying a conversation over and over again, or let's say a negative possibility. You're replaying it over and over again, and you're emotionally wrought up. You're not functional. You just tick it over. You're thinking what you should have said and what you didn't said, or you could have said this, or you could have said that, or if when they had said this, what if you had done that? Or then if you're imagining something that you think might be true but might not be true, and you're wrought up emotionally. If you understand that you have three modes and you unwrap this knowledge as a gift, you can back away from being lost in feelings and you can apply thought or action or both. So you can get rational with yourself. You can, and just that moment of distance from being trapped in the emotion that I'm doing this because I live in Vermont and we have snow and we have ice, and you always go through these things sometimes a year where you can't get your car because the wheel is spinning on the ice. So there's various things you can do when it's a car, but rather than get automotive, let's get back to psychological and spiritual and living fearlessly. So what you do if you wanted to use your mind in that place is you back up. And you say, I don't really have any evidence for this. This is a feeling. And, I'll wait and see how it comes out. Or, well, yeah, I didn't say the perfect thing, but I've lived through saying the imperfect thing many, many times in my life. Or, hmm, that's a feeling and I feel it, but I am larger than what I feel. I'm what I feel and what I think and how I behave. Or, one phase of thinking I believe is ethics. So one place that I go to often is like if I'm emotionally wrought up at somebody behaving badly to me and I'm starting to get reactive, I think to myself, other people's behavior is no excuse or rationale for my own. I get to choose my own behavior and my own response. So whichever one of these you're trapped in, you can switch modalities. So that I just gave you, if you're trapped in emotion, backing up with thought. Well, sometimes your thoughts, kind of join forces with your feelings. What then? You still have actions. You still have your body. And one thing that you can always do that is always helpful, assuming you're able-bodied and can do this, you can always go for a walk. Moving your body through space, left, right, left, right. I personally think that things like walking, swimming, skating, where you're going left, right. I think one of the reasons, I think science will bear me out on this in time. I haven't found studies on it yet, but I think those particular activities, maybe especially in nature, because they're two-sided, I think they sort of work to calm and integrate the left and right sides of the brain, the feeling, intuitive side, and the rational, analytical side. So they are just magic for calming down. So if you can't get your mind around it, if your heart is going crazy, just go on a walk. You've got 3 modes. If 2 are incapacitated, you've still got 1. It's like when people fly and there's more than 1 engine on most planes now. So you have a chance to salvage it. Another thing you can do in action, and I'm using action meaning physical action with the body. And you guys know, if you've taken other debonaires or classes with me, I'm really into self-care of the body, to embody self-care, because it just gives you an edge that you don't have otherwise. If you're eating well, if you're taking supplements that you might need to. I'm not too big a believer in supplements, but a little bit, if you're having leg cramps and you take calcium or whatever. A friend of mine swears by magnesium. Maybe those things work for you, but for sure, eating well, and I tell you, moving your body through space is just, it's almost a panacea for a lot of things. It's like being kind to this, sweet little case that you inhabit. Even if you think you're too fat or too old or too this or too that, you have the privilege of being in a body. And if you don't get too lost up here or here, you can let your body's animal wisdom help take you out of a place that's not serving you. I don't want to say a bad place, because I think some things are hard, but maybe not necessarily bad. They all have the capacity to transform us. If we don't get lost in them, they can be like a flashing arrow sign saying, rise, go back to your best and highest self. Go back to who and what you really want to be. That goes back to the debonair we had a couple of weeks ago about what is the one question you can always ask yourself that will reorient you towards true north. That being, and you should listen to the whole video on that if you haven't already, is this thought, feeling, or action? Again, see there already, we're talking about the 3 modalities. Is this thought, feeling, or action taking me farther from or closer to who and what I want to be? Well, inherent in that is, wow, there are 3 modes. Is this expenditure of, energy, money, time, taking me closer to its thought, feeling, and action again? So if your thoughts are not serving you, try an action that's good. If your actions are not serving you, try a different way to feel. Try to reset your way of thinking. And in some of the debonairs and classes, we're going to continue talking about ways that ways of thinking. Coming up, we're going to do one thing on disputational thinking, where you train yourself to argue with thoughts that aren't serving you. First to notice what's not serving you, and then to argue back with it successfully. We're all of us all the time. We're running this little story in which we're the hero or heroine or protagonist, at least, of it. And a lot of times it's like a show trial, and we're either convicting ourselves or defending ourselves, or the jury is weighing in. Enough. I can teach you how to dispute the thoughts that aren't serving you. But, you have to step out of your story enough to realize that it is a story that you're telling yourself, and you can alter it. And the most profound way to begin altering, even before you learn disputational thinking, before you start meditating every day, before you start doing so, is get this concept: thoughts, feelings, and actions. 3 modes. If one is not working and you're stuck, and generally whenever you're stuck, sometimes it's truly, as we've talked about before, that you don't have the piece of information yet, but the whirling around is internal. And so how you roto-rooter that clog out, or, to go back to the automotive thing, in real life, when the wheel is spinning, people in Vermont have mats they put under the car, so you get a little traction that way. Or I learned here, you bring a big pot of salted water to boil. Boiling water doesn't work, but salt water works to melt the ice underneath. You can back out. You can get enough under the wheel. So this is like your boiling salt water for psychological, emotional turmoil. Now, there is a possibility. Let us say that you are in an accident and you wake up and you're in the hospital, and you're like one of those cartoons where your legs are wrapped up and they're in traction and you can't move and you don't remember what happened, or you don't remember it fully. Again, okay, your actions theoretically are somewhat out of your control, or you can't do much with those actions. You can't go up and go on a walk. At that moment, what do you have? You have your feelings. You have your thoughts. You can switch to those modes. Now, for those of you who are able to do the gratitude thing and feel like you have integrity with it, at this point, we are told so often to be grateful in this world that sometimes it's hard to just experience it as truth instead of another thing that you should do. And if gratitude is not arising from your heart spontaneously, the last thing you need is somebody telling you should be grateful. God, do we need another should? It's like people telling you should forgive somebody. If the forgiveness is not coming from your heart, someone saying you really need to forgive her because it's only hurting you. Oh, please. These things, they either come authentically or they do not. However, in that dialogue between the different parts of yourself, again, you remember the 3 modes. So if you don't feel at all grateful, sometimes the mind can intervene and say, well, your own mind, not somebody else's, can say, well, is this not forgiving the person? Is this really serving you? Do you know for sure that she meant what you think she meant? I mean, your mind, in a way, it can, if you work with it enough, it can sort of act as, you can kind of be your own therapist a little bit. Ask those questions, and then work with answering them. So you're in the hospital, you're in amputation. So at that moment, you have 2 things still to work with. You have feelings and you have thoughts. And so you might come to being glad that you're alive, that you can't move. You might so gratitude is one. Another way that the mind can sometimes be really helpful in breaking up traction is, at a certain point, you may not recognize them, but you have a lot of victories under your belt. You survived your family of origin. You survived being born and being expelled from Edenic floating in your mother's womb. You survived breakups. If you're at a certain age and a woman, you might have survived some kind of abuse. You might have survived miscarriages. If you're a little older than that, you've survived the death of people you loved. And at a certain point, all of that surviving gives you a rather strange and lovely place to go in your thinking, which is you can say, wait a minute, I got through X. I can get through this. I stood beside my husband in the emergency room and watched him leave his body. I got through that. And so through your mind, you can access strength based on experiences that you have succeeded at. Wait a minute, I passed the SAT. I brought my math scores up from blank to blank. I can't tell you what the right numbers are because I never did do very well with SAT scores. I have a learning disability around numbers called dyscalculia. And so I never could bring them up. And yet, I can say to myself, well, I never got that math thing, but I have 50 books out and I'm living a good life and I can hire people to do the arithmetic and the bookkeeping for me. So when you back up, and so much of not being stuck and getting out of compulsive spinning your wheels, that thing that just ramps up the anxiety and ramps it up, is just being able to take a step back. And I have found it so very, very helpful to remember those three modes: thoughts, feelings, and actions. It is very simple. It's very obvious. You're probably thinking, you didn't pay anything for this one. It's free. But you're probably thinking, I'm taking a class for this, of course. But, I didn't know it until it was really brought home to me. Those are the only three things that we have to work with in life: thoughts, feelings, and actions. Within ourselves. Now, I live in a house in Vermont. It's a beautiful old house. It was my aunt's house. And a couple of years ago, there was a big flood in the winter, and 3 rooms in my house got destroyed. I now refer to them as the rooms of doom. A friend of mine who insists that I'm going to be able to fix them one day, she says, no, call them the rooms of bloom. She's trying to get me to think differently about them. But actually, even when I think of them as the rooms of doom, here's what I do. Now, by the way, I was insured, but the insurance was inadequate to fix those rooms up other than cosmetically, so I chose not to do it. Now, the rest of my house is pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good. And there is literally a door that I shut physically. I shut that door, and most of the time, I do not think about the rooms of doom. I have to pass through them to get to one of the back porches. It's been, now I'm not saying that I want to live with 3 messed up, unfinished rooms in my house forever more. I don't. However, I have been able to live with those unfinished, mostly destroyed rooms now for a couple of years until eventually I will have the resources to take action, and I will be clear on what action to take. But because I have learned how to self-soothe, because I have backed up from the immediacy of my feelings, I couldn't take action. So what did I have to work with? Thoughts and feelings. And that allowed me to physically shut the door, but also emotionally and mostly mentally shut the door for now. I certainly engage with, I think about it, but I don't think about it in the sense of like, oh my God, I'm not Martha Stewart. What if someone comes to my house and they see these imperfect rooms and they'll know I'm not very together? Well, I am together in some ways. I have 3 rooms of doom, but I am pretty together. And, I feel we all serve ourselves and each other when we're transparent about the areas that are imperfect, that we don't try to be what we are. There's no percentage in pretending you have it more together than you have it, because even if people buy it, they're not buying you. And so I present to you a self, and I offer to you the idea of you presenting to your own self a grab bag, a contradictory, life in progress, work in progress person that we all are. All of us can be incrementally more together, more close to who and what we want to be day by day, action by action, thought by thought, feeling by feeling. Nothing in this life happens by toggle switch. You hear me say this over and over. Yeah, a light happens by toggle switch. We're not lights that way. Everything happens in increments. And when you remember that you only have those three modes to operate in, thoughts, feelings, and actions, you, other than very rare occasions in your life, if you're trapped in one modality or even two, simply remembering that you have a third is the first step to switching to it, and then you switch. And there is such freedom in that. You know, we spend a lot of our lives being stuck, feeling trapped by other people. And I'll do other debonaires and classes on relationship stuff, because relationships are great petris for spiritual, emotional, and holistic development. They're not happily ever after. They're happily sometimes after, like all of life. So to be able to switch from being trapped, you gain freedom, even if your leg is in a cast, even if you're emotionally bereft. Emotion is one of the most seductive ones. You know, it will really try to convince you that it's real. And you can't just not feel things. And what I sometimes say, many of you know that my primary background is as a writer. So I often, the things that I've learned in life, many of them I've learned through the practice of writing. And many writers struggle with the fact that, you know, they'll have a beautiful idea that's so clear in their mind and they write it down and it's very clunky on paper. And I always tell writers, look, I tell them two things. I tell them, have your feelings, but don't let them have you. In other words, don't let them run the show. You recognize them, you say thank you for your input, but you don't let them run the show. But the other thing about feelings is pay attention to them, but not the attention that they want you to have. So, you know, when you have the feeling about the room, so the feeling is maybe at one point, oh my God, what will I do? How will I live at this house? How will I ever fix it up? You know, what does it say about me? So you say, I have some feelings about these rooms, understandably, but, you know, getting lost in them is not really going to help me find a solution. And I do have a perfectly good house on the other side of that door. And just that, backing up, that's the beginning of a very profound kind of freedom. So for those of you who may be listening to this, who believe yourself to be trapped, whether in a job or in a relationship or a state of mind, mostly, not always, there are some circumstances that just overwhelm all of us. And to those, I just, you know, you have to go through times when you truly don't know what to do and you are brought to your knees and your heart is ripped out. I don't know why it's arranged that way, but it is. Some states of mind, depression is, you know, if you can talk yourself out of it, it's not depression. It's just, it's mood. And, you know, there are some kinds of human hell that this is not going to work for. But I'm going to assume that most of you listening to this have some areas where you feel trapped and uncertain about, because you're a human being. So you're like me in that way, and I'm like you. Just to remember that you have a choice. You can, it's like switching frequencies. Switch from action to thinking. Switch from thinking to feeling. Switch from feeling to action. I have the joy, mixed joy, as you know from the Rooms of Doom, but I have, I live in Vermont on this farm that was part of my family's house. And there's a pond in it. And that pond is really cold. And if I really want to change my head, if I want to get new energy, I dive into that cold pond. And I guarantee when my body hits that cold water, I'm not thinking about anything. You know, instant mood changer. I have been known to take cold showers. And if you Google benefits of cold showers, it's astonishing how much I mean, I don't want to do a hard sell on that because I know you don't believe me, and you'll say, "Oh, well, I could never do that." Well, it's interesting. I've had cold showers. You know, I had a 30-day thing where I tried a 5-minute cold shower every morning, and I did it. I did it through hot weather. I could not quite bring myself to do it with Vermont water in the winter. That would cross the line to masochism, and I couldn't quite do it. But again, you've got that body thing. You can just, you can't get your head around it. Dive into a cold pond or take a cold shower. It's going to alter things. Maybe a softer, gentler way is to take a yoga class, a gentle yoga class. I do that twice a week. So the main point of this is that all of us are already operating in these three modes. We think, we have feelings, or we feel, and we act. We just don't back up enough to see that those are really our only, once you're born into a body, you're pretty much going to be in those modes. Only by recognizing those modes and recognizing the freedom to switch from one to the other, to whichever one is most functional at a given time, I won't say only, but it's a major way that we can get freedom for ourselves time after time. And that's just a marvelous thing. It's so available to us. It's so available. Yes, at different times we need a friend to talk to. We'd love a supportive partner. We'd love a counselor that could hear us. We would like to pray and feel like we hear the voice of the divine. We'd like clarity. You don't have to even wait that long, because not all of those things will come at the time we would have liked them. At any given moment, just like asking the question, remembering, wait a minute, I can switch modes. That can be such a help. So, my darlings, fellow human beings, fellow sojourners, as we make this journey from birth to death and try to do the best we can in between, I truly hope that this is of help to you. And the more, you can't give away something that you don't have. And many of us aspire to help others, including me. But the first one you have to help, of course, is yourself. Because if you're panicked, how can you instill peace? Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. As St. Francis of Assisi said, echoed sort of, kind of, a little bit in that thing everybody quotes about when you're on the airlines and the mask may drop down, put it on your own nose before you put it on somebody else's. So this is how you put the mask. One of the techniques of many that I practice and many that I am now trying to teach through these conversations with Crescent and living fearlessly. I've taught fearless writing for a long time. I'm finally owning up to extrapolating to the larger world of living. I'm so grateful to writing because it has taught me so many of these things. So I want you to, if you care to, I invite you to, let's put it that way. I don't want to even put the pressure of wanting it for you. I invite you the next time that you're going, now wait a minute, and your porcupine quills are starting to come up. At that moment, remember, you have a choice. And your choice is you can pull away from the thing you're lost in, the mode that you're lost in, just switch modes. It's almost like you're listening to the radio and you don't like the song, so you push the button and you go to another station and you keep clicking until you find a song that you like and you want to sing along to, or news, or whatever you're looking for. So I wish for freedom for myself, for you, for all of us. I wish for happiness and functionality and compassion. And I think a lot of that begins with being at peace with ourselves, which in turn begins not losing it over stuff. So may this peace help you. Instead of losing it, find it. Find center, find your true north, live as you're steering by that true north. And I look forward to spending more time with you. And I thank you very much for listening to this. That's it for today. Till next time.